Question 5 is huge. So this carries 40 marks. So we need to establish our timings for this. So 40 marks, you want to be spending 45 minutes. The mark scheme for this question is exactly the same as paper 1, question 5. So you're given the marks, 24 marks for your content and organization. So your ideas need to be very well developed, thinking at a very high standard. You're also given 16 marks for technical accuracy. So you need to check over your spelling, punctuation, and grammar, varying your sentence types. So that you need to have in the back of your mind. And you're always given a task, which is like an article, a speech, a newsletter, a letter. So for this task, we're given an article for a magazine or a website in which you argue your point of view on this statement. So always understand the task that you're given and the statement. You have to read the statement and then form your argument based on this. So let's read this one together. Our addiction to cheap clothes and fast fashion means young people in poorer countries have to work in terrible conditions to make them. So we know that based in the society that we live, this is a reality, this is a norm. We must change our attitude to buying clothes now. So there's this sense of urgency. We must change. So how do we change? So we're thinking about impacting people's mindsets, tackling their current lifestyle choices. And we want to get across our views in regards to this statement in the form of a magazine article. You have to argue your point of view on this statement. So initial thoughts, what are we thinking? So I straight away would start brainstorming, mind mapping some ideas. So I'm thinking about companies like Nike. Yeah, they take part in cheap labor across the world, and this is well known. And what we know is based on this, they're paying people really cheap wages and their products are charged at premium rate. So we need to ask, is this justified? So in my response, I would consider this question. So that would be one line of argument. We also need to think about the terrible conditions that people work in. So I might also consider the terrible conditions. So we see that across the world, people are suffering in poverty. They don't have a choice but to work in these places in order to survive. So already you can see where my mindset is and how I'm on the attack against these companies. The next point is saying that fast fashion means young people in poorer countries have to work in terrible conditions to make them. So I would also consider the idea that, is this ethically correct? Morally and ethically correct? I might use some statistics to prove my point. I'm also going to think about examples that I'm aware of. So I know that in the past, Primark has been scrutinized for its cheap product pricing. And then what it gets us to think about is, if their products are so cheap, how much are their workers abroad being paid? This is something to definitely think about. I would add a further point, this idea that, in the UK, we have laws and regulations which protect. We know that across the world, this is not the case. So if we look at examples in Asia, like Bangladesh, Thailand, the wages per person is really low. And this is something that we can bring up. So a living wage abroad is unheard of. And then we'd again question, should these multi-million pound companies be doing more? And when I'm exploring this idea, I might use emotive language. Yep. So if I'm using emotive language here, I'm using facts and statistics for my other points. You can make this up. I might even bring in an anecdote. So I might give an example, provide an example of a child who has been forced to work in horrible conditions, similar to the conditions that Charles Dickens described in the workhouses. So compare to workhouse conditions, and then we might ask, how is this still existent? How does this still exist? So this would formulate my ideas. Once I've got these ideas now, I'm going to think about what order am I going to address these points in. So my first point might be about Nike. So in my opening, I might appeal to my audience, question them about Nike products, how we see them everywhere, how Nike pay huge endorsement fees to celebrities. But when it comes to paying their workers who actually produce the goods in foreign countries, they don't want to pay them hardly anything. Then I might talk about Primark as another example. My third point might be my anecdote. After I've explored my anecdote, I might pose the question to the audience about whether this is morally and ethically correct. I might use a bit of persuasive, emotive language. I might then describe the terrible conditions that people are working in. And then I bring the focus back to the UK and how we have laws and regulations that protect us. When I get towards the end of my article, I would emphasize my message again and encourage my readers to be very wary as to where they shop from and shop in places that really empower their workers and provide them with some sort of benefits for working for a specific company. So this is how I'd go about question 5. This is just me thinking out loud, my plan, kind of my working out. So I hope you find this useful, and I will show you some examples in the next few videos as well.